Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we unpack complex research and really pull out the key insights just for you. Today, we're tackling a topic that causes a lot of worry for parents. Peanut allergy. It feels like it's everywhere, and honestly, the numbers back that up. Its prevalence in Western countries, it's actually doubled in the last decade. And maybe more surprisingly, we're starting to see it show up in places like Africa and Asia where it really wasn't common before. This isn't just a minor issue, It's a leading cause of severe allergic reactions, anaphylaxis, and sadly even death from food allergies. It puts a huge burden, emotionally and financially, on families.
It really does. It's a massive challenge. And what's so interesting is how our whole approach to it has shifted over time. For years, the standard advice, the clinical guidelines from the UK in '98, the US in 2000.
Well, I remember that.
It was all about avoidance. If an infant was considered high risk for allergies, you kept allergenic foods away, especially peanuts. They even advised mothers to avoid peanuts during pregnancy and breastfeeding. The idea was, well, prevent exposure, prevent the allergy. Seems straightforward.
Right. Avoidance was the name of the game.
Yeah.
But I get the feeling that wasn't the end of the story. Did that advice actually hold up?
Well, that's the twist.
Yeah.
Despite those really strong recommendations, studies just kept coming out that couldn't show that this strict avoidance was actually preventing peanut allergy.
Wait, really? So avoiding them didn't stop the allergy from developing?
Exactly. It was a huge scientific puzzle. So by 2008, those official recommendations, they were actually withdrawn.
Wow, okay.
Which left this massive question mark hanging over everything for parents and doctors. It's like, okay, what do we do now? Avoid. Introduce. The optimal strategy was suddenly up in the air.
That's a complete turnaround. So with the old advice kind of crumbling, where did researchers even start looking for new answers?
This is where it gets really fascinating. A real-world observation, something quite striking, sparked a whole new idea. Researchers noticed that the risk of peanut allergy was 10 times higher among Jewish children living in the UK compared to Israeli children who had a similar genetic background.
10 times higher. That's not just a small difference. That's enormous.
A massive flag, right? It made them question everything.
So you're saying maybe the avoiding strategy wasn't just ineffective, it might have been making things worse. What was the key difference between those kids in the UK and Israel?
That's exactly the question they asked. And the big difference seemed to be diet. In Israel, it's really common for infants to start eating peanut-based foods around 7 months old. They eat, on average, over 7 grams of peanut protein a month, often in the form of this popular snack called bamba.
Bamba. Right, that's like a puffed corn snack, but flavored with peanut butter, isn't it? Like a savory puff.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Super common for babies there. But in the UK, infants generally didn't eat peanut products in their first year.
Okay, so a stark difference in early eating habits.
Precisely. And this observation led them to a really bold hypothesis. What if introducing peanuts early actually protected kids against developing the allergy?
So the complete opposite of the old advice. Maybe eating them was the key. And I guess that's where this Lee trial comes in, the Learning Early About Peanut Allergy study.
Exactly. That observation laid the groundwork.
So our mission today is to really unpack this groundbreaking study, the LEP trial. It put that exact hypothesis to the test. Could introducing peanuts early actually prevent the allergy in high-risk babies? Okay, so that observation was a real aha moment. But to overturn decades of advice, you need more than just an observation, right? You need a really solid study. How did they set up the LA pretrial to test this radical idea?
Oh, they designed it very carefully. The main goal was really twofold. First, could early introduction work for primary prevention, stopping the allergy before kids even become sensitive? And second, could it work for secondary prevention, helping kids who are already showing some early signs of sensitivity?
And who were the babies in the study? Were they just average infants?
No, they specifically recruited infants considered high risk. There were 640 babies between 4 and 11 months old when they joined. And high risk meant they already had severe eczema or an egg allergy, or sometimes both.
Okay. So conditions that often go hand in hand with developing other allergies, like peanut allergy, makes sense to test it on the most vulnerable group.
Exactly. And before they even started the intervention, they did a skin prick test on all of them using peanut extract.
Why was that initial test so important?
It was crucial for stratifying them, for dividing them into groups based on their starting point. So cohort 1 had infants with no reaction on the skin test, basically, negative for peanut sensitivity at the start. Cohort 2 had infants with a small reaction, a little wheal, suggesting they already had some early sensitization to peanuts.
Got it. So you could see if early introduction worked differently depending on whether they were already a bit sensitive or not. How did they split them up after that?
Right. So within each of those cohorts, the infants were randomly assigned to one of two paths. You had the peanut consumption group. They were instructed to eat at least 6 grams of peanut protein every week.
6 grams a week. How much is that, roughly?
It's about maybe 2 teaspoons of peanut butter 3 times a week, spread out over meals. They were supposed to do this until they were 5 years old.
Okay.
And they encouraged using bomba, like in Israel, but smooth peanut butter was also an option. Then you had the peanut avoidance group. They were told, strictly, no peanuts at all until they turned 5.
Wow. Okay. Following hundreds of kids for 5 years, making sure one group eats peanuts regularly and the other avoids them completely. That sounds like a huge undertaking. How did they measure if it worked? And how did they track if people were sticking to the plan?
It was definitely complex. The main outcome they measured was simple. Did the child have a peanut allergy at age 5?
Yeah.
And they didn't just rely on parent reports. They used the gold standard,
No.
an oral food challenge. That's the most rigorous way to diagnose a food allergy for sure.
Okay, so a proper medical test at the end.
Yes. And to check adherence, they used detailed food questionnaires. But they also did something really clever. They collected dust samples from the kids' beds.
Dust samples from their beds. Why?
To measure the amount of peanut protein in the dust, it gave them an objective way to see if peanuts were actually present in the homes of the consumption group versus the avoidance group.
Measuring peanut dust in the bedroom, that is some next-level data collection. Serious dedication. So, after all that, 5 years later, what did LD find? Did early introduction make a difference?
The results were honestly stunning. Really, truly groundbreaking. The big picture. Early introduction of peanuts dramatically reduced how often these high-risk kids develop peanut allergy. And importantly, the strategy was safe, people tolerated it well, and it was highly effective.
A dramatic reduction overall. That's huge news. But you mentioned they split them into groups based on that initial skin test, those with no sensitivity and those with some sensitivity. Did it work for both?
Yes, and that's key. Let's break it down. First, the bigger group, the 530 infants who started with a negative skin test, no prior sensitivity. In the group that avoided peanuts, 13.7% developed an allergy by age 5.
Okay, 13.7%.
But in the group that ate peanuts regularly, only 1.9% developed the allergy.
Whoa, hang on. 13.7% down to 1.9%? That's an 86% relative reduction? That's incredible, almost wiping out the risk in that group.
It's a massive difference. Absolutely remarkable.
Okay, so it clearly worked extremely well for kids who weren't sensitive to begin with. What about the smaller group, the ones who did show some early sensitivity on that first skin test?
That was perhaps even more surprising. Among those 98 infants who had that small initial positive skin test, in the avoidance group, the allergy rate at age 5 was really high, 35.3%.
Wow, over a third of them.
Yeah. But in the group that ate peanuts, despite that early sensitivity, the rate was only 10.6%.
Still a reduction.
A huge one. That's a 70% relative reduction in allergy prevalence, even in kids who are already showing signs of sensitization.
So even if a child was already heading down the path towards allergy, introducing peanuts still significantly lowered their chances of getting there. That's powerful. It suggests it's not just stopping the process from starting, but maybe even reversing it somehow.
It certainly points towards tolerance induction, yes.
And the big question, always, safety. Were there any major problems with giving peanuts to these high-risk babies, especially the ones who already had some sensitivity?
That's obviously critical. And the safety profile was very good. There were 0 deaths in the study. Importantly, no significant differences in serious adverse events, like hospitalizations, between the peanut eating group and the avoidance group.
That's reassuring.
The consumption group did report slightly more overall adverse events, things like colds, maybe some mild rashes, gastroenteritis, but these were generally mild or moderate. Nothing pointed to a major safety concern with the early introduction itself in this monitored setting.
And you mentioned they kept almost everyone in the study for the full 5 years. That retention rate sounds amazing for such a long trial.
It was phenomenal, 98.4% retention. That really speaks to the commitment of the families and the study team. And the adherence data backed it up too. The avoidance group basically consumed 0 peanut protein, while the consumption group averaged nearly 8 grams a week in the first couple of years.
And the bed dust confirmed it.
And the bed dust confirmed it, yes.
Yeah.
It showed the intervention was real.
Okay, so the clinical results are crystal clear. Eat peanuts early, drastically lower allergy risk, and it's safe when done carefully. But why does it work? What's happening inside the body immunologically?
The mechanism. That's where it gets really interesting, looking under the hood at the immune system. So in the group that avoided peanuts, researchers saw that their skin test reactions, the wheal size, tended to get bigger over time, more reactive. They also saw higher levels of peanut-specific IgE antibodies.
IgE, okay, remind me, that's the allergy antibody, right? The one that triggers the reaction.
Exactly. Think of IgE as the alarm system that overreacts in allergic individuals. So avoidance led to more IgE, more reactivity.
Okay, makes sense. What about the kids eating peanuts?
In the consumption group, it was a different story. They saw a much bigger and earlier increase in peanut-specific IgG antibodies, and especially a type called IgG4.
IgG and IgG4. Are those different? What do they do?
They are different. While IgE sounds the alarm, IgG, and particularly IgG4, are thought to be more like tolerance markers or blocking antibodies. High levels of IgG4 are associated with a protective effect against developing allergy. It's the same kind of shift we see in successful allergy immunotherapy, like allergy shots.
So eating peanuts early seemed to encourage the immune system to produce these protective IgG4 antibodies instead of the allergic IgE ones. Like it was learning, this is food, not a threat.
That's the essence of it. It suggests a shift towards tolerance.
And you mentioned this dual allergen hypothesis earlier. How does the study fit with that idea?
It fits beautifully. The hypothesis suggests that maybe initial exposure through the environment, like trace amounts on the skin, maybe through dust or touch, especially if the skin barrier is compromised like an eczema.
Right, like the high-risk kids in the study.
Exactly. That skin exposure might promote sensitization, driving up that IgE alarm system. But early oral exposure actually eating the peanut protein seems to drive the immune system towards tolerance, maybe by boosting that protective IgG4 response in the gut.
So how you first meet the allergen matters. Skin exposure might trigger allergy, while eating it might trigger tolerance. Fascinating.
It provides strong support for that concept, yes.
Okay, so this deep dive has really shown how a major paradigm, a core belief in allergy prevention, was completely overturned. That advice we all heard for years, avoid peanuts in high-risk infants, wasn't just ineffective. The Early trial strongly suggests it might have been counterproductive.
Absolutely. Early, sustained consumption dramatically cut the risk of developing peanut allergy. It was a landmark study.
But it's important to add some caveats, right? It didn't work for absolutely everyone. They excluded some infants.
Correct. Important nuances. A small number of kids assigned to the consumption group couldn't actually eat peanuts. They had reactions right at the beginning or developed symptoms and had to stop. And crucially, the study didn't include infants who had a very large reaction on that initial skin test, a wheal bigger than 4 millimeter. They were considered already too sensitized.
So we still don't know if this approach is safe or effective for those most highly sensitized infants. That's an important unknown.
Definitely. You wouldn't want to try this without medical guidance, especially if there's already a suspicion of allergy.
Makes sense. So given these incredible findings, what's next? What are the big remaining questions?
Well, the huge question is about persistence. Does this protection last if kids stop eating peanuts regularly? They ate peanuts consistently until age 5 in the trial. What happens if they stop for a few years? Does the allergy come back? Does that tolerance fade?
Okay. Is the protection permanent or does it require ongoing exposure?
Exactly. And that's being studied right now in a follow-up trial called LEP-ON. They're looking at those same kids after a period of not eating peanuts to see if the protection holds. The results from that will be really crucial.
We'll definitely keep an eye out for that. So just to wrap things up, the little study was truly transformative. It showed pretty definitively that introducing peanuts early and consistently in high-risk infants substantially and significantly lowers their risk of developing peanut allergy.
A game changer for allergy intervention.
It really is. It's amazing how careful science can just flip a long-held belief on its head, changing practice and potentially improving lives. And that brings us to a final thought for you, our listener. If early controlled exposure can prevent peanut allergies so effectively, challenging decades of advice, well, what other deeply held beliefs, maybe about our diet, our environment, our lifestyles, might be ready for a similar kind of reevaluation, not just in allergy, but across health?
And what does this tell us about the incredibly complex dance between our immune systems and the world around us? A dance we're clearly still learning the steps to.
Lots to think about.
Until next time, keep exploring.